Welcome to Satsang. The last Satsang that we had, number 38, was viewed by over 1,500 people in less than a week. And I've had a lot of questions because I made a statement that we do not learn spirituality. You know, people practice spiritually, but the real growth to spirituality is unlearning fear and guilt. Because there was a statement in the Course in Miracles, and it said, all that is necessary is the removal of the blocks to love's presence. So when there is no guilt, well, the very love that we are, we don't develop love. It releases when there are no blocks any longer to it. So anyway, so I received a lot of letters regarding the topic, the video. And so they asked me, well, how did guilt come about? Because guilt didn't just come from upbringing or past lives alone. It's more embedded because it's unconscious. And most esoteric teachings tell us, just like the Course does, it's all unconscious guilt that keeps us tied to unawareness of our true nature. So many of the questions were, well, how did it originate? How did it all start? You know, blah, blah, blah. So this is what we'll be exploring today, okay? You'd like to know about it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the best way to explain that would be picture the following, okay? Picture it as clearly as you can. You are a human being. In truth, you are a being playing the human role. Now, the human is a wave. The being is the ocean. Now picture the ocean. It is calm, it is quiet, it is beautiful, it is silent, it is deep. Okay? It's vast. And then a gust of wind comes, very strong wind, and it creates ripples on the surface of the ocean. And as a result, it creates billions of waves. Now let's pretend for a moment that these waves have a life of their own. Because the waves are now representative of the human, right? So these waves have more or less more than a split-second lifespan. Let's give them a few years. So a wave would look at all the other waves, one particular wave, and it says, I am different than all the others, I am unique and I am special. So all the waves would look at each other and they feel the separation between them because they're all different. So let's take one particular wave as an example of all humans. So the human says, well, I am separate from all the other waves. You know, I am different. So therefore, there immediately comes the idea of comparing, of judging. You know, this is different, this is... Immediately, the moment he does that, not only he separates from others, but that very judgment that you make of others, you're making of yourself. So here begins a feeling of that separation. That separation creates a feeling of lack. A lack means that there's a sense, I am missing something. Something is missing. The moment you begin to think that something is missing, you begin to feel, I don't feel good enough. When you begin to feel, I am good enough, you begin to feel as if you've done something wrong, but you don't know what the heck that is. It's been described as a pebble in your shoe and you can't remove it. It happens to be there as a discomfort, but you don't know what it is. Now this feeling is on all humans who have not realized their true nature. But it's very subtle, and that's why it's called unconscious guilt. Now, this unconscious guilt creates something else. And this is where we begin to understand relationships. It creates the need and fear of love, both at the same time. Why? Because love is not something. Love is God itself, right? It is wholeness, it is oneness, it is all that there is. You and I are one, therefore it is wholeness itself. But because we haven't realized that, we have a need for this love, because we can't help it, because our nature is love. We are a human being, the being is love. The human is on survival instinct, which is a totally different thing. But when you don't engage the being, when you do not realize you are the being, you forget about the being. And all you think about is me, right? Which in these terms we call it ego. So when you begin to think me, and you have a great need for love, you want, okay, the need for love spells I want to be loved. I want somebody to love me so that I can feel good about myself. And the reason we want love, because we haven't realized we are love, but we are incapable of loving someone unless somebody loves us first. That's what I've just said creates all the problems of relationships. So unless they love us first, so what happens at this point? In our I had a point here. I'm beginning to lose it. Yeah, we develop a great fear of love at the same time. So we are what we love the most, we fear the most. Now, why do we fear it? Because you see, love in its natural stand is oneness. So you are the wave, but you don't know you are also the ocean, because every wave is not, it seems separate in its action, in its appearance, but in reality it's the same water, it's the same ocean. But because you have forgotten you are the ocean, you are life itself, you are oneness itself, you become afraid of death. The wave is afraid of not being a wave anymore, drowning into the ocean, and my gosh, I'm not going to be anymore. See, there's the fear of not being more anymore. But it's impossible not to be more, because you are the wave, you are also the ocean. Okay? It is the ocean that is acting like a wave. Similarly with oneness, with life itself, all that is acting out as you and me. You see? So when you begin to act as a particular person, as an individual, you begin to think that you are separate in the feeling. If you go back into your feeling, in your very deepest needs, in your deepest wants, you'll find that everybody is the same like you. What is it that we want more than anything? Love, right? Because we are that love. But how do we want it from an ego point of view? I want to be important, I want to be special, I want you to look at me. It starts very young, when a child starts riding a bicycle by himself for the first, or you know, and he's able to remove his hands from the handlebars, and he says, look ma, no hands, you know. We start being show-offs right very early in life because we want to stand out. We want to be paid attention to, but that is all part of the process, you see. Yeah.
It seems that there's something in there about needing to be seen, like how the ocean creates itself to see itself.
Yes. Well, it expresses itself.
Yeah.
Because expression is part and parcel of life. Okay? Yeah. The expression of life. So when you begin to express yourself, you also want love received for that expression. You want love in it.
Not knowing that you are just the expression.
Not knowing that you're just the expression in your love itself.
Yeah.
So it becomes a demand, it becomes a need for it. But that need does not come in a particular egoic way that you want it. You cannot be loved in your own terms because the person you are loving also wants to be loved in their own terms. So conflict arises immediately, you see, from that, because we make ourselves special and separate. And it is that separation, you hear it now? I'm talking to the people on the internet, that this is what guilt is. Guilt is the idea that you are separate, unique, and different. And therefore, you suffer the pangs of comparison, judging,
rejection.
And all that goes into it, right? Because also with it comes on something else. Not only there's a fear of love, but there's also there's a fear that you don't deserve love. You see? There's another thing. People don't admit it. It's part of the guilt. You see? For example, you talk to a person and you say, how would you like to meet a gorgeous woman who will love you? And he says, yeah. He says, okay, let's picture her, okay? She's beautiful, she's intelligent, she loves you, okay. And now he says, okay, now look around, there she is. Go and meet her. And he says, no way, they get scared, right? We become afraid of the very thing we want. Why is that? Because when you suffer guilt, you don't believe you deserve love the way you want it. But here is the good news. You don't need to deserve love. You are already love. You see? So this is the whole point. Now, in our upbringing, our parents are brought up with the same guilt. So that guilt was bestowed on the children. And the children, when they got married, they bestowed on our children again. Why is that? Because our natural action is to give guilt to others. For example, your child comes home and it says, oh, I did a bad thing, mommy. And the mommy would say, how could you do that to me after all I do for you? You see? Immediately we place guilt. You see? We don't even know we're doing it. So in other words, the very nature of our ego, of our human, is to instill guilt, which is fear. Okay, now fear comes, the fear of love comes from that guilt. Now guilt is unconscious, we don't know we're creating it, but it all came from separation, thinking we are separate. Okay? Now what I am saying is not true. Do you understand? Nothing I'm saying is true. You don't suffer guilt. Nobody suffers guilt. But we think we do because we think we are separate. You see, the fear of love is not true either, because we are love. But we fear love because fear itself is a no thing. It's a nothing. It's not something. You see? Just like when you fall in love with someone. What happens at the moment you fall in love? You forget yourself totally. All that you see is the object of your love. In that forgetting of yourself, you have no ego. So at the moment of being in love, there is no ego. But what happens is, the moment you separate from this person and you go home, you start thinking about her, you start dreaming about her, you start all these things. Before you know it, you've become caught in an image, and the love in you starts becoming jealous, possessive, and owning. You've already lost the beauty. But at that moment of falling in love, there is no ego, and there is no you. And so we subconsciously know that when we love something completely, we disappear as an ego, as a person, you see? And so we're afraid of love. And the fear of love is because when we are feeling that love, we disappear within that love. If you loved something, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's art, at that moment, if you truly, truly love it and you are being creative, at that moment you forget yourself. You forget about time. You know, you'll say, where did the time go? Right? So this is the process. The guilt doesn't come from our childhood. I've been doing hypnotherapy for 35 years. I'm not doing it anymore because I kept going to the past. But I've learned a lot how children brought up in a certain way develop certain characteristics. If a child has been abused, if a child has been not received loved, or the parents were too controlling, then the child escalates in his guilt. and so develops more complexes, more fear, you see, around him. So this is, but the natural guilt is the guilt of thinking that you are just a human and not a being. In other words, you forget you're a human being, which in truth is being, playing the human role, you see. But we reverse it. But when we reverse that, we also reverse what is called the mind. There is universal mind. The universal mind is the mind that created the world as we know it, with all its wars and separation and etc., etc. It goes on. And also, each individual is an individualized mind called soul. You see? So, so therefore, because we think there is that initial separation, it's very hard for us to transcend the guilt. And the reason we do also transcend the guilt is because we reversed the truth. The moment we were born, okay, we emphasized the human rather than the, you forgot about the being. In the same way, how the mind works, we have reversed it. The mind has two important functions: creativity, and the world is created by mind. Can you see anything which is not created by imagination? Look around you. Everything is created by imagination, which is mind. Okay? Now, when you know that you created it, when you know it's not real, it's imagination, then there's a lot of beauty in it. But if you don't know it's imagination and you make it real, it owns you and you suffer. That's what suffering is. And that's why throughout history, people have established certain beliefs, and they made those beliefs, instead of seeing it that it came from the mind, they made it so real that they became slaves to that. You see? Just like, for example, Ku Klux Klan, okay, just came to mind. You see? They are the superior white race. They don't want anybody, any different races. Okay, to them it's a fact, but they created that kind of world, and now they made it so real that they live from hate rather than love. Okay, when communism was created by Karl Marx, it was very idealistic, it was very beautiful. Let's be all equal, let's be all the same, but it can be carried out. So when the law enforced it, communism became a law to enforce those laws on the people, you see, then cruelty came into it, control came into it, and it became ugly because you made a law that was supposedly to be beautiful became ugly, you see. Germany, Nazism, Hitler wanted to have a master race. He had this ideal when he was in prison at the time during the First World War. And he tried to carry it out, but in order for him to carry it out, he had to find a patsy, right? A scapegoat. In this case were the Jews. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is this, that everything is imagination. There is nothing that is real except God, except love. Okay? So, but if you see it as imagination, if you see it as a dream, and all awakened people know that this world is a dream, as long as you see it as a dream, you are free, you are happy, you see, you are at peace. But the moment you make something real in the world, it owns you. And that is something very few people are really aware of, you see. And no matter what that is, even if it's money. Oh, I need money, I need security, I need to take care of my family, money is very important to me. The moment you make it real, money owns you. Now you become afraid of spending. You see what I mean? So anyway, so this is a very common law. But this is how the mind works, because we have reversed creativity and perception. We have put perception before creativity. But creativity comes first. The mind is creating all the time. From the moment a child is born, he starts creating his world. And if by the time he's 4 years old, 5 years old, and the parents never hugged him, never kissed him, never told him, I love you, the child begins to tell himself, I am unlovable. the first thought comes in. And before you know it, he's having some problems, okay, in himself, inferiority complex or whatever, because he believes that he's not worthy of love, that somehow or other. So, in other words, his imagination, which is creativity, has made it into a reality now, you see? And but he doesn't know, people don't know that the world that they're living in, they created it with their creative mind, because they put perception first. So I perceive the world like this, therefore it's got to be real, it's got to be. Not realizing that if there are 10 people in the room and you go inside each head, you'll see that each one is seeing a totally different world. And the world you're seeing is the world that you created in your mind. But you don't know you created it because you put perception first. Are you with me so far?
So is that part of the creativity of the wave even coming to be?
Creativity with everything that has a movement, with a happening. Okay? Being itself is not created. Being is. It's timeless, spaceless.
But it had to become a wave to be...
It had to become a wave in the movement of that wave in order for it to evolve back, to go home, to complete the circle.
Okay.
Do you understand? Right.
You have to know what you're not to know what you are.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Exactly. And when you begin to see what you are not, what is left is nothing. And when there's nothing left, you're just empty. You're just here. Oh God, how beautiful that is.
And the more you attach...
Because all you have is just the silence, which is called love, you see?
Of the ocean. Like I always go back to that picture you created.
Yeah,
the wave.
yeah. This is why pictures are so good, you see, because through our imagination, we can see it. And then it starts to make sense, because we go beyond words and we go into the pictures. You see, the mind thinks in pictures first. Then it uses words to accommodate those pictures. But then there comes a point when you don't even know we're thinking in pictures. We begin to think that what we're thinking is real. We do not see that we think in pictures first, which is a self-image. And then it comes into language. You see? But when we understand how creative we are, wow! And there's something else that happens when you begin to realize how creative you are, is that you become so creative in your life. Because you can create anything that you want. And you might say, well, okay, now, I want to be a spiritual teacher, but there's no money in it. It's true. How will I survive? You don't think about that, and you'll survive. You see? Because there's something else in creativity. Not only you create the way you love something completely, but there's something more. Is that you are sustained by a power that you can't even dream of, which is the being itself. It will take care of you when you allow it to work through you, in other words. Okay? Thank you. That was half hour already? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so I want to cover these three, and that will come in the next, this is the next video now. Okay, number one is that all emotional suffering, in fact all suffering period, it all comes from that unconscious guilt, that feeling that we hold inside us, that something is wrong, that I'm not good enough. You see? We feel a lack that eventually starts taking over. Number two, okay, which is very important, is that you begin to see that no matter how you feel, and no matter in what form it takes, it's a call for love. Do you know what I mean by a call for love? A person is angry, coming at you with fury. What is the thing you do? You probably fight back, or feel offended, or run away, right? But the truth is that the person who's angry at you, the anger is in them.
But why are you attracting that?
Hmm? That's right. Somehow or other I'm attracting that. That's true. That's true. But if I at that moment see, it's a call for love, I am able to stand my ground rather than run away.
Be reminded.
Be reminded.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, because it's always, yeah.
And that might be why it's happening. Who knows?
And it could be.
Right.
Yeah. So at this point, number 2 is a call for love. Everything is a call for love. And number 3, the most important part, what is it, number 3? First is everything is coming from unconscious guilt because we want love and don't think we have it. We feel separate, we feel alienated, we feel unwanted, we feel lonely, we feel isolated, we feel desolate. Number 2, we see all that was in the first is a call for love. What is number 3?
Recognition.
Is it forgive?
It is this is all forgiveness. Yeah. Number 3 is
To recognize that.
to recognize that there's only love. It's all love. Now, are you willing to be loving? You see? Now you might say, yes, I'm willing to be loving. And then you think a negative thought and you allow it. You're not loving at all. You have to have compassion for that negative thought. Are you with me? Now that's love. Are you seeing how? Because true love is unconditional. So that even if you think a negative thought, you don't say, I shouldn't be thinking this negative thoughts. You see it as a negative thought. And you don't do anything about it.
Or you might maybe not even identify it as negative.
Well, if you don't identify, then it's not negative.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Yeah. But if you identify it as negative, and then there's a part of you that says, I shouldn't be thinking like this, okay? That shouldn't part is a lack of love for yourself. Because love does not consider the self and the other person. It is oneness all the time. You see? So you simply allow everything to happen as it is happening. Everything is okay. The moment something is okay, you've removed the resistance from it. The moment you remove the resistance from something, can it still be negative? Let's explore this. Suppose you are angry right now. Really angry. Okay? What is anger?
Fear?
Oh yeah, everything is fear-oriented, but anger is a need to be in control because you don't feel that control inside you. Okay? Damn it! You know, like you want to be, you know, you want to gain control of something. That's what anger is. Anger is a need for control because you feel out of control. All right?
So even with that though, what is the control that's needed?
So therefore at that moment you want control because you don't feel you have control, so you're trying to do it externally.
So,
but at the same time, you're admitting without realizing it that you're out of control.
Because something or someone else has the control.
Either that, or you're trying to assert your control so that you are not demeaned. You know, you're not intimidated, you're not controlled by another, in other words. You want to remain your own person type of thing, but at the same time, if you become aware that it's not working, you see, you will remove the resistance from that anger. You remove all resistance. If you say to yourself, it's okay, I'm feeling this anger. I'll take a couple of deep breaths and you'll begin to dissipate it.
Or you could be aware you're in this anger, you can't let it go, but you don't act on it. And that's a beginning to...
If you don't act on it, it means that you, for somehow or other, you know that's going to be okay. You see what I mean?
It'll pass.
Yeah, it will pass. It is something, right. So the moment you know that for a fact, and you say, It's okay. This is for the time being. Take a deep breath and just stay. Don't do anything about it. Don't see it as wrong, because if you see it as wrong, then you bring guilt into it. And guilt always repeats. Always repeats itself.
Everything is a result of taking yourself seriously, and there's no self.
That's right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You're taking yourself seriously, and there is no self really, because the one who's getting angry and the one who's doing it's all ego. It has nothing to do with who you are. You see? Right. So the moment you begin to understand all that, the third part is to be love. And to be love is very easy because you are already love anyway. So you need to do nothing. You see? So the third one is non-action. By understanding the first two. And that becomes complete healing. See? And it's marvelous, wonderful things, miracles have been seen. That's why the Course in Miracles is called Course in Miracles, because it's based on forgiveness, you see. So are there any questions about guilt? Because that was the subject today.
Well, it sounds like guilt is such a natural part of being human.
Yeah, it is.
And then once you can recognize that you're not all human, you are human only from a source of being, then you're part of beingness.
The more you allow yourself to be, this is what we did with 1, 2, 3. You see, the last one, there's only love, you don't do anything. Because I am love, I am being. See, the moment you allow that, okay, that very allowing itself is taking you back to the being you have always been.
But even that allowing, there's so much, how do you say, practice in that. Practice, or, kind of, that word comes to mind, grounding yourself in your footprints.
You mean,
there's so much
in the beginning there's
settling.
a lot of work that takes place before you know. Okay. Yeah.
And it seems like we have to become two to become one, in the sense that you're actually seeing both sides of yourself in order to forgive yourself. I mean, you have to be two to see the human and the being, to be able to forgive. And once you can see the duality, there's really no need for it then.
That's right. You have to understand the duality for the way it is.
Yeah.
You see? And because the moment we were born human, we became dualistic creatures, you see? An up required a down. You see, male required female, right required left.
Is there
everything had an opposite.
Is there a third part to that, to be able to see the two?
And then there is a third part called the Trinity.
Is that the
Trinity? The Trinity is what all makes all three one. For example, you have a person with you and you say, "I love you." Okay, that's one part of it, but it's still duality because you're loving another. You are loving another, and that other person says, "I love you too." Okay, it's still duality. And then you bring the third one. What is the third one? The third part.
Love myself.
Love itself. Love itself. Just observer, observed, and observation. We'll make it very simple. That's the Trinity. Okay, let's bring the third factor. When you observe something, you are the observer of that something, right? So this is the observed, and you are the observer. But the only way to make it complete in total understanding, in its unity, there has to be the awareness that observation is doing the two. Got it? The observer and the observed are simply coming from observation. In other words, you place attention to that pivotal point, to that point that makes it, just like the chair needs 3 legs to sit steady. 2 legs won't do it, a duality. So in other words, duality always needs the third factor. The third factor is always love.
So that is, like what you're saying, Glenn, is like that kind of third observation brings it all together to
Brings it all
understand
together,
the
that
two.
third fact, yeah. It's just like marriage. Two people are living together and they say to each other, I love you. But unless they bring God into their relationship, the Holy Spirit or the love factor in it, the relationship won't usually last. You see, you have to bring that third factor, which sometimes you call it, well, I don't know, you can call it many things, you know, the Father or the essence or the being, you see, yeah.
And
It itself.
relate to each other in that
Yeah,
beingness.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're always interacting between one and another, but it's always a two, always a duality. When you bring a third factor, in my case I call it Holy Spirit. I love that word because it works for me. Okay? You can call it I am. So when you bring that into it, now you've got the Trinity, now you've got a foundation.
So then how might, I mean, it's understandable that in marriage, in that relationship, so how would that look like in the office or, you know, in the bank, whatever?
In every situation, okay, you're in the bank, you're in the office. Okay, so there are employees and there's the boss, there's the manager. Okay, but there's a third factor. What is the third factor?
Work.
No, it's love. Love of what you are doing. That is the cohesive quality. That's the third factor. If you are doing a job just for the money itself, you might make lots of money, but you won't be fulfilled. You see? Because the third factor, which is always love, has to be there to join those two together. You see? That's why in marriage they say, when two are joined together, let no man put asunder. Okay? In other words, when there is love, true love, because God joined them together type of thing. Okay? So now marriage will last. Well, that's the promise that we give. But most of the time, everything is dualistic as a human until we realize our true nature, and then they bring the being into it. The being is that third point without which nothing can succeed, nothing can work, which is, again, I repeat, love, being, you see.
But love, I mean, I guess we get lost in the description of that as emotional, but that can be whatever.
No,
integrity,
emotional love is
quality.
emotional love. It's not true. I'm talking about true love. True love is unconditional.
No, but what I'm saying though is like that love can look like, you know, being authentic, being.
Oh, it's going to be authentic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess
Many
I'm thinking
people
more
have
like
sexual love, only sexual love, and it feels great. It's wonderful. Love making is a wonderful thing. But you soon get tired of each other when it's just sexual, because it doesn't go any deeper than that. You see? Because there isn't the love. So you are only engaging the lower three chakras. You're not even engaging the heart.
But I guess I'm trying to get that more out of relationship and bring it more into the world of work, where love is not, at least in why I work, it's not that much of a thing happening there.
So you bring it in. You bring it in there.
Well, how I do that is by, you know, clarity and I guess joy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, joy is love. Okay, when we talk about love, we're talking about all the qualities that go into that love.
Yeah.
Joy, peace, happiness, fulfillment, the fullness of being, all of it is love.
I had a question come up earlier. I was thinking, like, is love a noun or a verb?
Hmm? Well, it's more of a verb than a noun. A noun is an object.
If love is, it is.
It is. Love is. You cannot define it, just like God is.
You
God
might
is love.
act lovingly, but love is.
Acting lovingly is not necessarily love. You cannot act at
Well,
all.
you can
just
be
be there and be perfect
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
That's one thing, that you can fool another human being, but you cannot fool an animal. Did you know that? They recognize love immediately. If you love a cat or a dog, they recognize it immediately.
Oh, they feel it, yeah.
Yeah, they can feel it. Yeah.
Until we don't have any questions left, any doubtful questions, we won't know the depths of our nature, of our truth, until the questions don't dry up. Right? Like all the questions of like the doubt that may come up and stuff like that. Is that part of the guilt?
Well, many questions are filled with guilt and attack, but at the same time, remember that a question is a quest. It's a seeking. It's a seeking of love. See, people don't know it. As a matter of fact, a person is seeking, but is it true that I am ugly, or is it true that I am a bum? Is it, you see, and you say to them, you just love them, and you says, no, you're just a beautiful human being, I love you. And the moment they feel that love, they feel okay. You see what I mean? So what I'm saying is that all the questions are a quest, and they all want one answer, believe it or not. You can have 1,000 replies and 1,000 words, but what that person wants to hear is that he or she is okay, everything is okay. You see? So we keep on asking questions until we come to a point where we see that oneness called love. I keep repeating that because that is the major thing, you see? So when you put that first, when you focus on that, then everything is understood. Every question, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a very deep question or a personal question or a question about the world or your neighbors, the reply is always the same. The reply is to make you feel okay with what is disturbing you. That's why it's a question, it's a quest. It's a need. You see, there's a need for you to know. And that need is coming deeper than just the words you are seeking. There's a deep lack in you that is not satisfied. I get from 30 to 60 questions every day from around the world, and everybody is seeking on their level to feel okay. You see? And that's what everybody is seeking. So in a way you reply and you always make them feel good in asking that question, because whatever you're asking means you want to know, and what you want to know is that you're okay. You see? All we ever want, did you know that? When we are like, you're angry, you're upset, you're frightened, you're frustrated, you want to get even with another, but all you really want ultimately is to feel okay with yourself. Is to want to feel safe, to feel secure. And if another can make you feel that way, and you feel that way, then all the anger and frustration is gone. You see? Because that's all we're ever seeking or wanting. In other words, to make it very simple, all we ever want is to get rid of that guilt that eats away at us, that makes us feel something is wrong with me, I'm not good enough. I'm unworthy. I don't deserve the best. You see?
So would a child supposedly raised in perfect condition still feel the same?
He will still carry the guilt, but it won't be as pronounced. Because if he's got very loving parents and accepting him and not controlling, which is rare, you know, because parents think that they should control the child. You see, no, you have to be a doctor or a dentist or something like this. You know, it's not enough to want to be a musician or just to be working with your hands. You know, you put the ambition into the child because the parents themselves might not have had the success, so they put it over to the child. But what happens is that they destroy the happiness of the child by controlling the child. But if you love the child and allow the child to be itself and to do what it loves to do and encourage it in what it's doing, then the child's guilt is about minimal. You see? And it will only be because he hasn't discovered himself yet as a spiritual being, which will, the readiness will be faster because at that point he's already has had the foundation, you see, of love. You see, the most difficult, as a hypnotherapist, I found the most difficult people that I've had were people who felt abandoned as a child. They were the most difficult of all. Now, women who have been raped, they were able eventually to forgive and clean out the problem, the trauma. But people have been abandoned has been one of the greatest stuff to deal with.
Is that
See?
maybe because there was no identity to work with?
Very good. Because when you were abandoned, your identity was destroyed. When you're a child, you begin to build up that identity. When you're a teenager, it becomes very strong, you see. But what happens is that when the child has had no identity, he spends his whole lifetime trying to find an identity. So no matter how much he studies spirituality, no matter how he practices, he's not able to
exist, to be the wave almost.
He's looking, or she is looking for identity all the time. See, and so that's what makes it very difficult. But it still can be. It still can be done. But you know. But it has to be. But it has to be a very strong willingness. A willingness to really see yourself as a being playing the human role. Because again, what happens to you as a child will usually stay with you for the rest of your life, unless you begin to learn all about love, you know, your true nature.
This feels like a weird question, but how do you, it's like needing to not believe you are you.
You are always you.
Well, you know,
but you see, okay, this is where we have. This is something that is very paradoxical, and very, very few people understand it. Okay, but eventually everybody will understand it, because that's the crux of the matter of spirituality. Okay, in truth, there is no ego. Okay, in other words, there is no person. There is no individual person. There is no you. And then you have a spiritual experience. And you maybe have a glimpse of oneness, okay? It can happen at any time. And you have a glimpse of oneness. You disappear in that oneness. But it's still you who's experiencing the oneness. Are you with me so far? So when you come out of that oneness, you realize there is no you, because you is everyone. Are you understanding me? Ramana Maharshi used to call it the self, capital S. Not the small s that we think we are, but the self, capital S-E-L-F. And everything is the self. Whoever you see is yourself in a different form. You are everything. So the you, the me, is annihilated by you, the bigger one, the bigger picture. Are you with me so far?
So just to go back to the waves, it's like what you just said a while back about the waves.
Yeah,
the other wave.
The wave is looking at the other waves, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and it says, oh my goodness, if I drown into the ocean, I'll be no more. But then it stops back, it gets the grace of awakening, and it says, yeah, but I'm a wave, and all these are waves, and we're all the same ocean. So how can I die? I am the ocean. And then it finishes, and all that's left is the ocean. But it's still you. The one, this is the mystery. That's why Jesus said, the greatest mystery is how Christ lives in every heart. Mm-hmm. You see? So when your ego dies, oh, Jesus said something else very, very similar. He said, when you lose yourself, you find yourself. In other words, when you lose the idea of being a separate individual, then you realize that you are everything and everyone. You are life itself. You are being playing the human role. No, this is called holographic. You see, the smallest fragment is also the highest part. You know, everything is part of everything else. Nothing is separate. Everything is holographic. You know what holographic is, eh? You know the word holographic? Hmm? You understand? In other words, if you take a cell of the body, which is invisible to the naked eye, you can clone another being called Burt. You see? Which is amazing, but it's a fact, scientific fact. That, you see, the smallest fragment, if you take a drop of water, and it's so small that you can hardly see it, and you magnify it 1,000,000 times, you see another universe. You see what I mean? Because nothing is too small and nothing is not too big, because it's all oneness, it's all holographic. You know? And time and space is relative. We're getting very deep now. Anyway, are we clear about ego, about guilt? We're clear about guilt, eh? Okay.
It's just not a big deal, it's just there.
It's just there. It's not even there.
Yeah.
You just think it's there.
You just think it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing is a big deal when you love. And when you love, that's what peace is.
But nothing is a big deal.
Hmm?
You said nothing is a big deal, and nothing is a big deal.
Yeah, nothing is a big deal. Like when you say nothing is real, you know, and I said, what am I saying here? And some people might think that I'm talking about nothing, but I'm talking about what is real. The real is nothingness.
Or like nothing exists.
Yeah, nothing exists.
But we hold on to the idea of nothing as like trying to look as an object.
Like that's right.
Literally like nothing exists.
For example, quantum physics, then it's been proven that what we call a material universe doesn't really exist at all, because matter doesn't exist. It is still nothing. It just appears solid to our senses. But in truth, it's not even there. See? Fun stuff.
It is fun when you know.
Yeah. But the most wonderful thing is the realization that the world is an illusion. Then you stop taking it seriously.
Bert, is the observer's self something that grows and strengthens? Or is it there?
The observer is. It is the self. It is the being. Nothing happens to it. It does not progress. It does not grow. It does not die. It does not live. It is. That's what God is. God is. Love is. So, you see, it has no definition. There are no words to explain this.
So it's actually just...
It just is.
Well, I guess it's kind of like just what enlightenment is. It's just...
Enlightenment is when you realize there's no you anymore. There's only this. And you thought it was you. You thought you were a separate individual. You still see things the same. Everything is still the same. But right now you're no longer caught in you. Oh, what's going to happen to me? You know, am I going to die? Or is this going to happen? Or am I losing money? Or am I going to be worse? Or am I going to pass that exam? Or am I going to make a success of my endeavor? None of that exists anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. That's what awakening is. Awakening is you become part of that isness. Everything just is, and you live moment to moment with what is, and becomes love, expression of love. You see, and everything is taken care of.
Well, what's funny is because prior to whomever awakens, it's always been then also has been what is. It's just our perception that has created it in a certain way, our lens, because let's say there's 10 different people.
That's right.
and that's the only thing that fades away, but it continues on the way it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, you'd still make a cup of tea and drink it. You still, whatever.
Everything is the
Do
same.
the gardening. And
Yeah.
take the bus.
Yeah. Everything is the same. To the outside, everything is the same, but inside, when you look, you see a totally different world. You see, when people get angry or upset, you know, to you it doesn't mean anything, but that doesn't mean you don't have compassion, because you understand where they're coming from. To them it's very real, but to you it's not real at all. You see? And because it is not real, if they spend time with you, all of a sudden you'll find, wow, they're smiling now, they're laughing. You see? Because you give them a part of your, by osmosis, you see what I mean? You give them a part of you without having to say anything. But what changes is that your perception again changes, you see? You don't see things like you saw before. Everything was real before. Now nothing is real except God, except love.
And that sounds so settled as in permanent. Like when you get it, you get it.
When you get it, it's get it. Yeah. How can you lose
How
it?
can you unget it?
You cannot lose that which you could never lose. It's you. Even when you don't have it, it's still in you. But you have to recognize it. You see what I mean? We have to realize it.
There's a part of me that wants to get that myself.
Well, then you never will.
No, but that's why I get it when I sit with you. It's just like, oh my God, it's just so there. Like it's just so.
Yeah. It's always there. Okay? That's the beautiful thing about satsang, and it's also a reminder. You see, I don't do this just for people. I do this also for myself. Because every time I do it, I reinforce what I already know. And there's no limit. There is no limit to the love and the joy that you can feel.
Wow.
Because you're not gaining knowledge. Knowledge is not important. Knowledge is information. Okay, like reading a book, it sounds fine, but it doesn't give you the awakening. What gives you the awakening is seeing that you're not guilty at all or have never been.